Hey, better late than never. This is the Leafs Convo, the Sunday Spectacular for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com if you're into low interest rates, but still big discounts and getting a whale of a deal on anything, especially an F-150. When it comes to the Ford fleet, I am your guy at Norm at Oak Ridge Ford. Thanks to Oak Ridge Ford for all of their sponsorship and sponsorship support over the last several seasons. It is Sunday, March 2nd, 2025. Norm in London, Mike in Buffalo. The Leafs getting out of Pittsburgh with a win by the skin of their teeth, a 6-5 overtime victory. It was not pretty, but William Nylander's winning goal certainly was. It's 5 straight wins. They are perfect coming out of the Four Nations event. First in the Atlantic Division, jockeying for top spot with the Florida Panthers, potentially soon the Tampa Bay Lightning. So another game with the San Jose Sharks tomorrow, Mike, and then they're off to a little bit of a 3-game Central Western United States road trip with Vegas, Colorado, and Utah mixed in there. Good evening, my friend. How are you?
Good evening, Norm. The Leafs gave everyone a little bit of a scare today because, the Pittsburgh Penguins suck. They're not a good team. They're going to finish. They're either going to finish 15th or 16th in the Eastern Conference, depending on whether they win or lose the contest with Buffalo for bottom spot. It's sad because Sidney Crosby is truly a great player, and he's wasting one of the final years of his career. Hopefully he goes on for a few more, but for a team that's just terrible. As the Leafs have done less this year, but have done regularly over the last few years, they played down to their opposition. They jumped out early, then they fell asleep, and then they woke up and they got to overtime and got the 2 points, but it was not an easy ride.
This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com, OG's Conference. I'm your guy. Low interest rates in March. I mean, really low. Great lease residuals. At me, Norm at Oak Ridge Ford. I certainly will get you on the road. When it comes to a Ford product, maybe even pre-owned, but you name it, I want to help you because you help us keep the show on the road, and it means a lot to me. So, Mike, it's 5 straight wins for the Leafs. By any means necessary sometimes, okay? Joseph Woll, he's been the backbone for this team from start to this point in the campaign. Under siege early, not the best looking performance from this guy, but you're going to have those kinds of games. It's the result. They could have folded up the tent and said, hey, we won 4 in a row, 7-3 in our past 10. We didn't get our 2 points on Sunday, but we'll get back at it against San Jose on Monday, and that's a winnable game. But they didn't. They fought back, and they got the 2 points. Pittsburgh is susceptible to goals against, 233 for the season. I mean, the worst team when it comes to keeping the puck out of its own net. I know you're always looking for something to critique, and that's your job. That's why we love you. But can you not just pack this one up, say we got a W, it was ugly, but we'll move on back home, try to continue this winning streak?
Well, you're not going to ignore the 2 points. You want the 2 points. It's just the way they got the 2 points was a little disconcerting. I mean, if you put that back to back with the effort against the Rangers where, Anthony Stolarz had to stand on his head because I think the Leafs had less than 20 shots on goal, but he was, full marks for the victory. And I only found out after the game today that Joseph Woll was ill. And that's the reason why Stolarz played back-to-back games. Otherwise, my assertion since he came back, and that was just before the Four Nations, is that for the rest of the year, it should be an alternating, it should be a goalie rotation. And since they came back, it has been up until it was Stolarz, and it was Woll, and it was Stolarz, and it should have been Woll on Friday in New York, but because Woll was sick, they went with Stolarz, and now Woll plays on Sunday afternoon against the Penguins. And he, they didn't get a number of, Pittsburgh didn't have many chances early on, but then, they were being outshot. I think it was 13-4. And then they ended up at the end of the first period out shooting Toronto 17-13. So it was, it was a baptism of fire, and Wall let in a couple goals I think he would have wanted back. But, they got the 2 points, like I said.
Are you thinking there were some lingering effects from his illness on Friday during today's game, and maybe that's not why he was tip-top? Or can we just go back to the idea that these are the types of games we don't expect the Leafs to win during any occasion, but they pulled it off? The entire crew, not at their best, Wall included, got the W.
It's possible he had lingering effects. I mean,
right.
He wasn't, I don't think, at his best, but I can't lay all the blame for the 5 goals on Joseph Wall because the defense was terrible. The Brian Rust goal, he was allowed a free path to the net.
Right.
The goal, the Rickard Rakell goal early in the third period, same thing. Austin Matthews allowed Rakell, tried to stick check him, couldn't do it, and Rakell went to the front of the net and beat Wall. So, I mean, there were some defensive errors there. There were some chances that I think, a consistently good defensive team shouldn't allow, but every team is allowed a bad game, and this was theirs.
Hey, like the content, subscribe to the channel. It's always nice when we bring on new subs, and when I see the thumbs up for our content, it makes me feel good. It makes Mike feel good, and it's nice to know that we're continuing to ascend with this project that started on YouTube back in 2018. Maciej Gutkowski on the community portion of the YouTube channel, youtube.com/the Leafs Convo/community. I know Mike is a Wall guy, but personally, I'm starting to lean towards Stolar starting game 1 of the playoffs. He just seems more consistent. Wall seems to have many off games. I don't know if, that's just with the eye test, Maciej. I don't know if that's the truth or not, Mike. 22 games to go in the regular season. You're thinking it's a rotation. That doesn't necessarily mean you're advocating a rotation. You've said it many a time here that Wall should be the guy that the entire goaltending tandem is built around. Is Maciej onto something, though, over the next 22 games? If Stolarz plays the way he has, stays healthy, and Wall, whether it's true or not, appears to demonstrate a speed wobble, could we see Anthony Stolarz start game 1?
Well, here's the issue, and this is the reason why I'm advocating a split of the work. They may want to go with Stolarz to start game 1. I just don't have any confidence that he'll be there at game 7.
But wait a minute, Mike, sorry to interrupt you. Haven't you constantly and consistently said that Wall should be the guy?
Yes. I mean, if it's me, I'm going with Wall because I do not think Anthony Stolarz.
But shouldn't he be playing the bulk of the time? Not a split. Should he get more than 11 games if he's healthy out of the final 22 here?
I would, but I think the best case scenario to expect from Berube is a split.
Right.
They like Stolarz. They like he's a veteran. They like the way he's played, and he's played very well. But my issue is that he is fragile, and he's been fragile his entire career. That was, the reason he is a backup is not because of his ability. The reason he was a backup is because of his availability. Yeah. And he fell into that. I mean, when he was with Anaheim a few years back, there was talk about him getting an opportunity. And I think that year, it was a year that Gibson got hurt and he was out for the rest of the year. But Anthony Stolarz has never shown an ability to be a 50 to 55 game goaltender. And I don't think at 31 or 32 years old, whatever he is, that's going to change. I think at best you can hope for a goalie rotation for the remainder of the regular season, but I would go with Wall in the playoffs because if you go with Stolarz, you're going to end up going with Wall anyway because Stolarz will not make it through a round.
So you think that regardless of how we get to game 82, once we cross into the playoff world, you've got to have a guy. Can we not figure it out in the first round and ride a hot hand? as the playoffs progress, but obviously you have to still be in the mix with the tournament, right? So,
Right.
like, are you? I mean, you advocate for things, you suggest things, you're for things, you're against things.
Mhm.
When the playoffs begin, you're suggesting that Joseph Wall should be the guy, and if he's the guy throughout, so be it.
Yes, I think that they need to find out whether Joseph Wall can be the number one goaltender.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they signed him to the contract that they signed him to because they believed he was the number one goaltender.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Stolarz was only the number two goaltender and got the work early on in the season because Wall was hurt before the start of the season. Once he was healthy and then Stolarz got hurt, Wall took the bulk of the games. I'm just saying, like, I mean, people can disagree. I think Jerkball in the chat was saying like Mike is just doubling down on bad takes. No, I think it's a good take. I don't think Anthony Stolarz can stay healthy. He has never shown an ability to. And we know what happened last year when a goaltender, whose name was Joseph Wall, didn't stay healthy. I was going back and forth with a friend who was like, he was being critical of Wall's performance today and was basically saying the same thing that other people were saying, is that they got to go with Stolarz. It's like, okay, they go with Stolarz and they lose. You still haven't answered the question that they need to answer this season. Is Joseph Wall a number one goaltender? Are you going to go through next year not knowing? You have to know.
Right. For me, I'm comfortable with either. And that's a really good thing. Can you imagine pinning your hopes and dreams on one guy, and if he goes down for any period of time, you're screwed. If Wall appears to be overworked or he's had a bad night, and Stolarz is there, you can count on Stolarz, and you give Wall the opportunity to reset. The guy is proven. He has number one pedigree, right? I don't think we should eat each other and beat each other up and create divisions over a Wall versus Stolarz argument that never goes away. You're good with either.
I think that both need to be ready. I don't know if we can 100% trust that Joseph Wall can make it through a playoff series because he never has. Because last year he got hurt in game 6 at the end, and they had to go with Samsonov in game 7.
Right.
I don't know if we can rely on him, but that's why Stolarz needs to be ready. And
real quick, Mike, Diz K, Stolarz is the top 2 goalie in the league. Look at his numbers. I mean, he's right up there with save percentage. He's his goals against average is elite, but he hasn't played Connor Hellebuck minutes. Right, Mike, and it's nice in the sample size that we've seen from him that he is producing, because that's exactly what we wanted. But refrain from aligning him with the best goalies in the league who are in there night in and night out, and the greatest goaltenders of this generation. I mean, he's putting up those kinds of numbers within a small sample size, and that's what we wanted.
Yeah, he's okay. Stolarz is 13-5-2, 2.22 goals against, 927 save percentage. 13-5-2. That's 20 games. 20. Now, I'm just looking here because started 21 games. Okay, so they have 22 games remaining.
Right.
He should play 11 of those games, and Wall should play 11. Split it down the middle. Right. Have them both ready. If you want, if Craig Berube wants to go with Stolarz in game 1 of the playoffs, that's his right. If it's me, I'm going with Wall. But
fans like shiny new things, Mike. Wall's been there. Wall's helped this team get to where it's at today. Stolarz has been injured. What else was new? He's returned, and he's looked amazing. He's the shiny new object right now, and he's producing. That's all I give a shit about, really.
No.
And we have these internal battles within the fan base, because we've been chomping at the bit for so bloody long for this team to do anything of real substance, to carry us through, to get us all collectively to a new point of excellence beyond a great regular season and dipping our toe in the playoff waters. So this is what we do. We argue over these kinds of things. It can be constructive and it's okay. But look, neither one of these guys, Stolarz nor Wall, has proven really anything outside of showing glimpses of being number one caliber. So they all have a lot to prove, the same way the team does. You know, just to put some perspective into it. That's what I do.
Yeah. So Aaron, excuse me, in the chat said, "Do you go with Wall against the Golden Knights on Wednesday because you're going with Stolarz against San Jose tomorrow night?" Yes, you go with Wall against Vegas, and then they play Saturday against Colorado. You go with Stolarz in that game, and then you go with Wall against Utah.
So that's just a standard rotation. You are not setting guys up to either success or fail against teams you believe they will play better against.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's whoever's up next.
Right.
You know, next batter up. You know, I think, and that's a good test. I mean, Vegas. I mean, that's one of the best teams in the league. That's going to be a challenge for Wall to go into Vegas and perform well. I like the one thing I don't think that you can do, and I would hope that Berube does not do, is all of a sudden you're in a race with Florida for first place in the Atlantic. I'm going to ride the hot goaltender, and like Lindy Ruff is playing Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen every game except back-to-backs, or Winnipeg is playing Connor Hellebuck. Okay. Neither one of these guys, I think, right now, where they are in their careers, Stolarz being in his early 30s and with a history of injury issues, and Wall in his first year as, you know, what was supposed to be the number one starter, but basically it's going to end up being a split. Neither one of them are ready to be 55 to 60 game goaltenders. So split it down the middle and prepare yourself for either eventuality when the playoffs start in the middle of April.
Yeah. Mike, I'm. It's refreshing to hear this from you because we've heard you say during shows gone by, and I know you have this belief that Joseph Wall should be. You want to find out what you've got in this guy, yeah. So let him be the horse. However, you know, down the stretch, you can't have some dude sit for too long. You want to make sure both are there and ready. And I know you want Wall to be the guy when the playoffs commence, but I am surprised that you're. Well, I mean, you're. I wouldn't say you're conceding, but you're okay with a platoon right now.
No, I'm not. It's not that I'm okay with it. It's the fact that I'm looking at reality in the face, and they're clearly not going to do what I've advocated they should do.
Right
now, it's basically okay. I've resigned to the fact that they're not going to play Wall like every game except back-to-backs. They're not going to play him 2/3 of the games. They're probably going to play him 50-50. Fine. Right. Game one of the playoffs, if it's me, I'm playing Wall because I need to know what Wall can do. And I'm not saying sacrifice or throw away the season, but, you know, because when Samsonov was down 3-1 in the playoffs last year, they went to Wall, and the only reason they got to Game 7 was because of him. Mm-hmm. So, and yeah, obviously the players who scored the goals, but I'm saying, you know, he was a big part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we've said enough about it, and I do believe the fan base is encouraged by what they've seen between the pipes, not just recently, but this entire season, right? Even when Dennis Hildeby got in there, even when Matt Murray helped out for a spell, we weren't sounding the alarm over what we believe was going to be a disaster between the pipes that would end the season. So here we are, 5 straight wins. The team isn't completely healthy. I mean, what's going on with Chris Tanev? That's a big deal. Calle Jarnkrok, what's the situation with him? I mean, those are two, light question marks. And then what is Brad Treliving going to do in 5 days' time? When we get to 3:00 on March 7th, Friday, what will he have done to make this group that could go all the way that much better without mortgaging the future of an organization that wants to be in these kinds of positions year in and year out?
Well, I mean, part of the equation that Brad Treliving is going to have to make is where you think this team is and what you think their chances are of, if they add this piece or that piece, can they have success?
Right.
Treliving sort of poured cold water on that because the momentum engine that is the Toronto rumor sphere was getting going over the last week. And, I mean, good reporters who have great sources like Elliot Friedman and Pierre LeBrun and Chris Johnston, they're talking about Braden Shen. And the rumored price that is out there is patently ridiculous. It's absurd.
Is that the Toronto price or is that the price?
Well, that's the price that's being circulated in Toronto. So, now I think that, we know how this works. There's a price for Toronto and there's a price for everybody else. And what I think Treliving was wise to do is he came out and he said, well, we don't have to go all in. I think, we're essentially, he poured cold water on all, like, we must do this. We have to do, it's like, no, you don't have to do anything. And if the price is too high, you move on to the next one. The fact that, I like Braden Shen, and I think Braden Shen would be a nice add to this team. But Braden Shen is 33 years old. He's making $6.5 million for 3 more years after this year. He's not the fleetest of foot players, and he's only going to get slower. And his offensive numbers more than likely will not go up; they'll go down. So I like him as a player.
But you want a player who prevents offense coming at you. You want somebody who's more defensively minded, more responsible, and who can play that tighter version of hockey that we're going to see in the playoffs. The Leafs don't need any more scoring, Mike. They need competency. They need guys with pedigree, guys who have something left to prove, to show that what they've accomplished in the past they can do again with another team.
You would be right to say that they don't need scoring, except when it comes to the playoffs, when the reason that they've lost is they don't score enough. There's a difference between playoff hockey and playoff scoring and the regular season. And we know that all too well. And this team, they're losing games 2-1 in game 7 because they can't get more than 1 goal.
So I see what you're saying. The guys who are expected to score and who have scored are locked down to a degree where their chances are extremely limited. You need somebody else who has that ability, who may be given a little bit more leniency due to the fact that, the top guys are going to be so focused on. So I hear you.
Yeah. And that's where a player, a proven playoff performer like Braden Shen, who has won a Stanley Cup and who has scored in the playoffs and who is a bigger player and a tougher player and plays the playoff style hockey. I can understand why. It's the same formula. It's the same type of. Remember, he was a teammate of Ryan O'Reilly. Same makeup. Right. It's just the price. And with Ryan O'Reilly, they gave up a number 1, and he was a rental, and there were other picks involved in that as well. He was a rental. Shen is around the same age as O'Reilly, and he's 33, and he's got 3 more years. And clearly, Doug Armstrong is looking to trade him because they may be in a rebuild, or they may say, we got to get rid of him now when he's got value, because 2 years down the road, that $6.5 million is going to be an albatross around our neck.
So is Braden Shen the kind of, sorry, Mike, but is Braden Shen the kind of guy you want around for multiple years? You'd like somebody cheaper and like somebody younger with greater upside for sure. But if you think the price is high for Braden Shen, good luck trying to get a player of that ilk, of that capability, with that much possibility. It makes the whole idea of a transaction for the Maple Leafs, that much more difficult, if you know what I'm saying.
Okay. If Braden Shen was a rental and cost a lot less than has been rumored,
sure,
I would be more on board with it. Where I see the problem here is in the cost that has been mentioned, which for people who don't know, it's been the usual pick, prospect, player.
That's
and
crazy.
it's been first round pick, which would be 2026, prospect, probably,
right,
Easton Cowan or Fraser Minton. And then the player, I mean, they haven't talked about a player on their roster. They talked about a secondary prospect. So you're talking about another young player like a Nikita Grubyankin or maybe a Dennis Hildeby or whoever. I'm like, okay, you're giving up 2 young pieces and a first-round pick. So 3 young pieces for a 33-year-old guy who may, in 2 years be a liability on the cap and on the ice. And
But
that's
we
too
like
much.
deals for the sake of deals. Francisco Pinto. Treliving will do nothing. The future is now. Do you see Florida or Tampa worried about the future? I don't blame Francisco for feeling that way. But here's the question, FP. Is there a player that conceivably you can get that you'd be okay expending all of these assets on?
No.
And doubling on that question, is this team positioned at peak to go and do something like that where, I mean, you could really hamper the future for the now. But hey, we make a deal for the sake of making deals, right?
Well, I'll just say this, because we heard this talk a couple years ago before they traded for Ryan O'Reilly, and people were saying, oh, just trade this guy Nyes. It's like, my God, it's like, the future is now. We gotta win a Stanley Cup. We don't know what Nyes is gonna be. Okay, what's Matthew Nyes now? Tell me, what is he now? He's one of the best players on this team. He plays on the top line. He's going to score 30 goals. He's
got as many goals as John Tavares, 23.
Yeah. So, and he's 22 years old, folks.
Right.
That's why you don't trade your kids. That's like, we don't know what Fraser Minton is going to be. We don't know what Easton Cowan is going to be. They might not be stars. They might be just good players. But this team with 3 players right now now 4 players currently making over $10 million. You need entry-level contracts. You need quality players. Mm-hmm. You need young players. And I'm sorry. Now, Francesco was basically saying something about Florida and Tampa. There's a difference between Florida and Tampa and Toronto. Florida, let's see, they won a Stanley Cup last year. Tampa, they won 2 Stanley Cups, and this team, you don't trade your young. I mean, if you're trading it and you're getting a guarantee you're going to win a Stanley Cup, fine, but there are no guarantees. So
do the Leafs have enough? Again, going back to the question whether the Leafs should do anything. Like, if there was a player who made sense and who you could conceivably get, are the Leafs positioned in the right way at this stage of this group's development and growth and tenure? And is there enough in the system that you can barter to bring in a new player that may or may not pay dividends when it's all said and done? But allow your organization to continue down the road in a healthy way.
You're asking the right question, but the problem is there's no way to know that. There's no way to know, like, okay, if you add this player, maybe you win. That's what these managers, they roll the dice or they evaluate things, they have more knowledge about what's going on within the team than we do. We don't know how hurt Austin Matthews is. Austin Matthews has scored one 5-on-5 goal in the last 10 games. He's not Austin Matthews. He's not the Austin Matthews that we know. And remember, Austin Matthews was out almost half of that series against Boston last May or last April. So his availability affects the ability of this team to win. William Nylander did not look, he scored the game-winning goal today, but he did not look really good. There was a little bit of Mr. Willie and Dr. Nylander going on today, which we haven't seen much of this year.
Right.
You have to evaluate where your team is at and how good they are and who they could come up against and balance all that in terms of whether it's wise to expend future assets to roll the dice and take a chance. And I'm saying right now, there is nobody available at this deadline short of Mikko Rantanen, and that's a pipe dream, that is going to be a ridiculous difference maker that's going to make this team win or not win. Can they add players? Can they add a piece here or there that will help them? Yes.
Right.
That's why I've been a proponent, Norm, of them trading for Yanni Gord. You don't have to give up a lot for him, probably a second or third round pick. Right. You know, if he doesn't work out, he's a rental. He walks away from nothing. You know, if you go out and get a right-handed defenseman, if you bring back Luke Shen or you trade for a David Savard, fine. Those aren't going to be extremely costly moves. That, you know, you're not going to give up any of your top prospects. That's fine. Anything more than that, rolling the dice on somebody like Braden Shen, who Craig Berube knows from St. Louis. I get it. He likes the guy. He's a great player. He's just not. I don't think he's somebody who makes a difference between them winning and losing in the playoffs.
What we're getting from you, Mike, is regardless of what happens, you're for a conservative approach, taking everything into consideration. But let's think about it from Francisco Pinto's point of view. Let's think about it from hundreds of thousands of other Leafs fans' point of view. What they see is a team that's won 5 straight out of one of, a pretty exhilarating hockey event where Maple Leafs played a major factor.
Right.
They're looking at a couple of young and hungry and tenacious goaltenders, may or may not be healthy, but the goaltending situation's as good as it's been for the Maple Leafs in a long while. They have a head coach that has, fire in his belly, who has won. They have a new general manager. Kyle Dubas is no longer the guy. The idea of metrics are part of it, but not all of it. They're seeing a team that has as good a shot as any team that they've been a fan of during the Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares era. How can they not be excited? How can they sit and be measured in their wants for this team and be subdued in their fervor, or kind of tamping down their fervor and being subdued in the way they approach game in and game out? I can see where they're coming from, Mike. Right. I get why they're excited.
But that's
the way the Leafs are right now. Why the hell wouldn't you want them to go and do something that's potentially wild to take a shot at it, to take a run at it?
But that's why they're fans and why I'm somebody who does this for a living. And that's and I'm not saying
he does it for a living, folks.
Yeah, I mean, it's my job to analyze this team and to look at the future ramifications of what they may or may not do. And I look at this team, and hey, if you're a fan of this team, there is no reason not to be excited. I mean, they're playing well. They're playing differently under Craig Berube. They're better defensively. They have a shutdown pairing with McCabe and Tanev. I think their defense needs a little bit of a tweaking and a little bit of an improvement, but it's not terrible. Team defensively, they're better, but there are holes, and I don't know whether you can fill those holes. Now, okay, Alexiak, I don't know about. Alexiak is a left shot defenseman, 09 max. If he was a righty, I think that would be perfect because he's big and he's mean. Colton Parayko, I'm sick and tired of hearing. Colton Parayko has not had a good year since they won the Cup in 2019. I was really surprised that he made Team Canada for the Four Nations. I really was. But it's the same situation as Braden Shen. He's got years left in his contract. St. Louis is going through a rebuild. They're willing to trade these guys if they get overpaid. I'm just not in the game, in the business of overpaying for players that are in their 30s. I mean, if Martin Necas was available, 24, 25 years old, and the Leafs needed a scoring forward, sign me up. He's 24, 25 years old. But you're talking about players that are in their early 30s and probably have 1 or 2 good years left. Now, somebody in the chat was saying, like, trading a prospect like Topi Niemelä, who clearly doesn't fit to what this team is looking for from their defense, that makes sense. I would probably think if they trade for a Luke Shen, who's got more than a year, he's got a year left on a contract, I could see a Niemelä if Nashville was amenable them trading that type of guy. And I just have to say, because I keep seeing people say, well, what about Buffalo? What about JJ Peterka? What about Peyton Krebs, Henry Yokiharu? The Sabres will never, ever, ever trade with the Toronto Maple Leafs. They just will not.
That's unfortunate, right? Business should be business at the end of the day. Look, you've potentially got John Tavares and Mitch Marner here for another 2, 3, 4 months, and that's it. Like, I'd hate to see these guys slip into a warm bath in their final go round with a team that made Marner's name and a team that John Tavares always wanted to play for and has done pretty damn well in contributing to. So, there's just so much at play here, Mike. The other question is, and it's the main question, what's at stake? There will be another season. The Leafs, if Matthews and Nylander and whomever the replacements are for the Tavares, if he leaves, and Marner if he's not re-signed, we'll do the trick. Perube will have another season or 2 or 3 or 4 or 10, and the team will be in contention again. But for this season, if they don't go all in the same way that, they've gone all in the past and fans want them to again, what's at stake? Another first round exit, a third round exit, going to the final potentially. What's at stake here, Mike? It's not as if it's do or die, is it?
No, it's not do or die. I mean, if people think that the Leafs window closes if Mitch Marner leaves in free agency, then so be it. I don't think that's the case. Because if he leaves, then they have almost $11 million in cap space to spend on somebody else. And I only sign Mitch Marner if the contract makes sense. Now they will sign Mitch Marner if they go deep in the playoffs because they won't want to mess with the formula. But if they lose in the first round, I think he's gone. Mm-hmm. But that's that's not the concern. The concern right now is how do you make this team the best that it can be and the best going forward. And it's a balance. It's not throw caution to the wind. It's not do what Kyle Dubas did, which was trade years worth of draft picks for one run where he got O'Reilly and Shen and McCabe and Lafferty. And, he added 5-6.
Real quick, Mike, Francisco Pinto, I love him. He's really interactive during the show. And Francisco, keep it up. East is open. Why wouldn't you go for it, Francisco? What do you mean? Like, what are you suggesting? Like, what are you talking about? Right? Like, everybody's going for it. If they have an opportunity to play in the playoffs, they're going for it. But what do you mean, though? That's what I want to know.
He thinks
you have to have a willing trade partner. You have to have the assets. You have to be able to make sure that it fits within the cap ramifications. If it was there and it was obvious, I'm sure the Leafs would do it. But what do you mean by go for it? Because I'm interested in what the essence of going for it is, right, Mike? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I mean, okay, that's the common refrain of a lot of fans. Is like, there's an opportunity here. Florida's weakened, and the Rangers have fallen back, and Washington is unproven, and this is an opportunity. Okay, first step first, you got to win the Atlantic Division. Because if you fall into the 2-3, then you face Florida or Tampa, and I think they could win one of those, but I think it wouldn't be favorable. You'd prefer those teams beating the crap out of each other and then facing them in the second round if you get by the wild card. But now the Leafs will be the team if they win the Atlantic with the second best record, so they would face the first wild card. That could be Ottawa. That will be difficult. It could be Columbus. It could be.
But your deals will have been made before we resolve the endings, Mike. And I think that's what he's getting at. Just go for it. Make a trade. Get rid of Cowan. Get rid of Mitten. Trade draft picks.
But you have to factor in who you're going to play and what you're going to do and what your chances are. You can't just go willy-nilly and say, "Fuck this." You just can't do it. It's dumb. And that's how teams end up out of the playoffs for 13 or 14 years, like a team that's right here. You just can't do that. You have to be a smart manager. You have to manage your talent. You have to make sure you plan accordingly. You just can't do, caution to the wind. And the thing that the Leafs fell back on after 2 years ago when they wasted all those draft picks and prospects to get O'Reilly and Shen and Lafferty and everybody else, is that they had the core four still. And that enabled them to continue to be a good team. But you just can't, I'm sorry, you cannot keep throwing young prospects away for quick fixes and think that you're going to continue to perpetuate being a good team. You just can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Maybe this team, the way as it's presently constituted, with some guys coming back from injury and the opportunity for the core four to right the wrongs of their playoff pass, is good enough. How do we know? Maybe it is. With the East being wide open, maybe it is good enough. I mean, we want to add, but what's a glaring hole that we, as hockey fans who follow this team day in and day out, year in and year out, what's the glaring hole that we all know is going to sink this team in the postseason? Is it the fact that there isn't a third line center that you can count on? Do they need another defenseman? I don't think there's anything, Mike. Sorry, I don't think there's anything glaring enough for us to believe that this team cannot progress forward. We want the team to make a deal for the sake of making a deal because we're the mighty Maple Leafs. The trade deadline's coming. There are names out there. The Leafs have some capital that they can, send the other way. But let's be honest. We've been talking about potential deals for the last several months. Mm-hmm. The same names keep coming up, and they're all meh. Yanni Gourde, Scott Lawton, maybe Braden Shen. The Savard kid out of Montreal. Who's out there that we know that the Leafs can make a deal for and not hurt their future, that we would all believe would make this team that much better and put the Leafs that much closer to winning a championship? A few more points and we'll get out of here.
They're pieces to the puzzle.
Right.
They're not the puzzle. That's the problem. You add a third line center that can enable you to move Max Domi to the wing where he belongs, and then you're stronger up the middle and you're stronger on the wings. So, and then, if you are smart and you waive Ryan Reeves to the ECHL and play, guys like Alex Steeves or Connor Dewar on the fourth line who can actually serve a role, then you're fine. I think you're better up front by that one move. Defensively, I think you need a right shot defenseman. It doesn't have to be a top pairing or a second pairing guy. It can be a Shen. It can be a Savard. The thing is, those moves are not overly costly. They're not.
They would augment the group, not save the group, Mike. Let's be frank about that.
Exactly. You're augmenting the group. You're making them more whole. You're giving yourself more options. Now there's still going to be weaknesses. It's not going to cure everything, but it's not going to cost you everything either. You can make those moves and give up draft picks and not give up Cowan and Minton and Danford and Grabyankin and your first round pick. You hold on to those assets because those players in a year or two are going to be playing for the Leafs. You just don't trade them.
Right. The team's not at a crossroads. I mean, the team is relatively healthy. I mean, there are going to be some things to reconcile, just like any other team has to on an annual basis. But, I mean, these are pretty damn good times for the Leafs. My thing is there's just nobody out there who absolutely fits a glaring need for the Leafs that is attainable. And we just have to we have to just accept that. There's no point spending money for the sake of spending money or making a deal for the sake of making a deal and losing a first round pick that could turn out to be the next Connor McDavid, or getting rid of an Easton Cowan who needs to get a chance to do something with this organization. They put enough into the guy. It's Fraser Minton is another one who, you might consider trading, but for someone temporary. There's nobody out there, Mike, who's obvious, and that's, the long and the short of it. Before we go, I just wanted to throw out some player names and ask you a question as to, just what they'll ultimately accomplish this season. And if they are to, it would be a kind of an all-time year for this particular player. Mitch Marner, 75 points through 59 games. There's a quarter of the season to go. Does he reach the century mark in points?
Yes.
Care to guess as to how many? You think like 105, 106? I mean, he hasn't been great coming out of that tournament. He's got, he was great, nice goal against Boston the other night, but it's not like he's putting 3-4 points up a night, right? I mean, he's got a few goose eggs of late, and that could slow things down a little bit, but you think he's got 25 more points in him over the next 22?
Yeah, I'll say 102.
102. William Nylander, beautiful goal. To win it for the Maple Leafs, as you say, Dr. Willie or Mr. Willie or whatever the hell his alter ego is making appearances more of late, and that's going to happen with every player. 35 goals, I can't see him getting to 50. I think 45 would be a beautiful season for him. What do you think?
Well, remember last year he slowed down at the end of the season, so I think he'll break 40 for sure, but I think he'll fall short of 45, so I'll say 43.
So Austin Matthews, 390 goals for his career. He's passed Darryl Sittler with 200 less games, and he's 30 away from the all-time greatest Leaf, Matt Sundin. Whenever he surpasses Matt's, it'll be
bite your tongue.
It'll be statistics only that gives Austin Matthews the crown. Number 13 will be forever. He'll be forever the greatest. He may not even be the greatest Swedish Maple Leaf of all time.
He isn't. He isn't.
Oh, come on. Borje, God rest his soul. We can actually.
Borje changed the game of hockey.
Yeah, we'll talk. Let's do that. The greatest Maple Leaf Swedish Maple Leaf of all time. We'll do some evergreen content.
Hammerstrom was better than Matt Sundin.
You are so bitter, Michael Augello. You are just so bitter. The two things you need to get over and just come to peace with is Matt Sundin not waiving his no trade clause back in 2009, and Barry Bonds in your mind not being the greatest home run hitter ever. Before you hit the dirt, Mike. You're gonna have to come to terms on these things. How about Bobby McMahon? 17 goals. Does he get to 25, or is that a tall order?
I think he'll get 20, but it's like, he's a hot and cold guy. He's played pretty well this year, but I think he'll get 20. I'm not sure about 25.
All right, here's a question. Nylander's already at 35, Matthews 22 goals, Tavares 23, Nyes 23. Will the Leafs have 4 30-goal scorers when it's all said and done?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's pretty impressive considering, Matthew Nyes is just getting his career started. But for me, Bobby McMahon's been an amazing story, and it's awesome. Real quick on Chris Tanev, what did you say about him? Like, where is he at? When is he coming back?
They said, after the game against Boston, there was fear because he had his arm in a sling, that it was something serious. Turned out to be something day-to-day. I believe they said before today's game that it would be a couple games. So he'll probably be back by Wednesday or at the absolute latest Saturday for on the road trip. But it wasn't a serious injury, so they dodged a big bullet there.
Matthew, don't call me Tony Tanti as a question. I don't even remember what your question is, Matthew. Why don't you answer it again?
Retype it in the chat.
Retype your question. I'm sure it's some crazy trade idea. But in the meantime, Mike, tell us about the new project you're launching now, aren't you?
Yes. Bill Meltzer, former, and myself, both former hockey buzzers. We are starting our own website that will launch sometime this week called hockeyhotstove.com. So I will be covering the Leafs for that website, also doing some general NHL stuff as well. And it will be the platform for a number of podcasts, including the Convo. So, and we'll probably have a podcast on deadline day, shooting for probably 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock on that day. We're not 100% sure, but we're probably gonna shoot for that. But yeah, it'll be fun. Looking forward to it. Looking back to, I'm not leaving the hockey news, so I'm going to be doing double duty. So covering the Sabres for hockey news and hockey hot stove, be covering the Leafs and the NHL. And no, there is a hockey buzz, but I have nothing to do with it anymore.
Okay, well, thanks for settling that, Mike, because I was losing sleep over your affiliation with Hockey Buzz. I wasn't sure where it was at.
Oh, yeah.
So Matthew Tanti gets us all hot and bothered over this question he wanted me to ask Mike. He wants to know if Buffalo and Toronto would trade with one another. You just talked about that.
Yeah, Matthews. I think he's trolling us because I said three times in the chat, Buffalo will never trade with Toronto. The last deal of significance was the Andrechuk, Pupa, and a number 1 for Grant Fuhr in 1993. Somebody in the chat had the Dominic Moore deal for a second-round pick.
Yeah.
They did swap late-round picks a few years ago, and the pick ended up being Pontus Holmberg. So they'll make those kind of deals, but anything of consequence. The Sabres do not want a player like a Dylan Cousins or Bowen Byram walking into the KeyBank Center wearing the blue and white of the Maple Leafs and screwing them.
Right.
They just don't want it, so it's not going to happen.
That's a little man kind of stuff, but it is what it is. Corey Parrish, OG, good evening, Norm and Mike. I'm curious as to whether you guys think the Leafs. Corey, we've been going at it for 51 minutes, man. We've talked about this on several occasions over that time. Why don't you hit pause, hit rewind, and start from the very beginning? Always good to see you, Mr. Corey. Guys, like the content, subscribe to the channel. Why doesn't everybody right now like this content? If we get everybody who's in the chat, all 121 of you, we'll have like the second most likes for any of our content this season 7, and we've done like 30 or 32, 33 episodes. So if everybody likes the content right now, this will be our second potentially most liked content of season 7, and that would be really, really, really amazing. San Jose at home tomorrow, then it's into Vegas on Wednesday. The Leafs will have potentially some new players on board, maybe not, but maybe. In Colorado on Saturday, and then they wrap up kind of a mini central United States, Western United States road trip in Utah on the 10th, and that would be 1 week from tomorrow. So these are exciting times, and I understand why people are so jacked up. I mean, if the Leafs were struggling, we'd want them to do something to help remedy the circumstance. As we sit right now, it's who can come in and make what's happening better without mortgaging the future. I'm pretty sure that Brad Treliving and those guys will act on the conservative side of things and not go too crazy. But we have 5 days between now and the trade deadline. So I wouldn't say anything can happen, but maybe there's something that we're not suspecting that could develop and make this whole circumstance, this whole situation that much more tantalizing. Mr. Augello, thank you for being here. OG's Conference, thank you. For Mike, I'm Norm. The Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford on this beautiful Sunday night in early March is out.